Welcome everyone. We will be talking on monitoring and evaluation indicators in today's video. So, what are the indicators that are necessary to understand, perhaps comprehend, perhaps use to analyze a particular project thereby? So, first and foremost thing we need to understand what is an indicator. Remember, indicator is just a number. It's a number which varies over a period of time under duress, under stress, under different conditions, under normal conditions, and so on and so forth. So basically, it's a number which is a variable which changes, and the change will indicate whether you are on the right path or not. A number which indicates that you are able to measure something. It is just an aspect of a program project or a project, perhaps in this case scenario. So an appropriate set of indicators include at least one indicators for each significant aspect of the program or project, and that is why we require it for monitoring and evaluation purpose thereby. So characteristics of good indicators. Number one, and there are plentiful of characters. I'm just trying to point out the six best characteristics. Number one remains it should be validated. It's a valid and accurate measure of a behavior, perhaps a practice or a task. It just gives an indication as in what you are doing, good, bad, ugly. Just an indication what are the variances that has been there. Reliability. The next best thing is reliability. It will give you enough confidence to understand what is actually going out in the project by means of different observers. Precise, an indicator should be precise, should be durable, should be understandable, responsible, and be very visible through your naked eyes. In fact, it should be reflecting in clear terms what is doing good or what is doing bad. So it has to be valid, it has to be reliable, it has to be precise. Best case scenario, any indicators should be measurable about there, and that is what we look forward to. Next is indicators. Now there are something called lagging indicators and leading indicators. Now what is lagging indicators is after an event it tries to nullifies or probably gives you an indicator what is to happen or what has happened and why this has happened, wherein leading indicators are the indicators which will predict before the event has actually occurred. So needs to be on a timely basis. If it can be on a real-time basis, nothing like it. Programmatically important, linked to public health, probably yes. That is the reason why we are composing of public health to understand this project or this presentation, this video, in achieving its objective thereby. So a characteristic of good indicators has to be valid, reliable, precise, measurable, timely, and programmatically very important. Now, let us dissect the indicators characteristic one by one. First, being valid. It's an accurate measure of behavior, practice, or task. Indicator measure what is supposed to measure. Direct measures, proxy measures, straightforward interpretations, change in value signals, a change in the final concepts or behavior thereby. Next, best scenario for indicators, good characteristic of indicators being reliable, consistently measurable in the same way of a different observer. Types of measurement, sampling error, over-representation of urban population because access is easier. Non-sampling error is where survey estimates, let's say for the health issues would be abortion incidences due to the responses biasness. Why responses biasness? My people might be having certain preconceived notion over an incident, over a behavior. In a health scenario, certain people would like to shield their illness or shield their health report with the public in general, and there are other individuals who would likely to flaunt what they're suffering from. So there are sampling error, there are non-sampling error, and there are biasness that creeps into it. Subjective measurement, indicators that ask for personal judgment such as quality, environment, and the progress thereby. So good characteristics of an indicator would be precise on timely basis, operationally defined in a very clear terminology. It should be understood by the layman languages, layman people. Activity developed definitions for new users, knowledge of acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, that's AIDS, that what we are talking about it, quality of care and trained manpower. Let us talk about measurability as a quantifiable characteristics of a good indicator. indicators. Remember, measurable is one thing which can be quantified, probably put a numbers to it with the availability of tools and methods thereby. Examples of measures are days of, let's say, drug stock outs. Now, there might be stockouts, there might be event when you are not able to service a client because of your own deficiency, right? And there are events where you will not be able to service a client because probably the clients are not available on those days. So, at when there are customers, not no customers are available, probably the business is suffering, and you cannot help it. But what if customers are available and inventory is low? That is something where you have to put a fault on your head, take the responsibility that you are not able to cater to the customer requirement. Total fertility rate, or TFR, is one of those measurement, actually tells you what is to be done and how it is going around it. Indicator related to poverty reduction strategies per se. Characteristics of good indicators are timely manners. On every time, at every pick of time, span of time, you are able to come up with indicators. Now, that is the real time basis that we would love to go around it. Provides a measurement over a period of time of interest with data available at all appropriate intervals. Timeliness consideration, reporting schedules, recall periods, service schedules, length of time over which change can be detected as the case might be. Programmatically important, the last but not the least, is any indicator should be catering to a particular project which are unique to the things. Let's say in this presentation, I am trying to address with a health issue as a of a project as a project perhaps, but then there might be project for construction basis, probably the indicators would be completely different. There might be project for production of let's say steel, or any ore, mineral ores that we're talking about it, where we are going to produce in TPDs, or ton per days that have been produced, or steel tons per day of steel being produced. Now that can be wide measurement, but that cannot be done for TPDs as far as ton per day for customers health checkup. Probably no. You need to check what are the spread rates of an illness, perhaps how are you detecting it. So every indicators would be catering to a particular project, and that should be programmatically important. Example, I just for an academic interest, let's say a condom distribution programs, indicators will be number of sex partners in past 4 weeks, you might be asking. Example, program to increase the access to oral rehydration, that is ORS. If you want to go to oral rehydration salt, ORS, for childhood diarrheas through community-based program. Indicators a number of ORS packet being distributed in a past week. Factors to consider when selecting an indicator. Now there has to be a logical link to the framework. It should come to it. All those indicators should add up to reach your overall objectives, your goal, the end means of your project. Programmatic needs, information of decision making, resources, external requirement, government, donor, headquarters, data availability, and standardized indicators as the case might be. And that is what we all stand to look forward to. Operationalize indicators. To operationalize an indicator is to identify how a given concept or a behavior will be measured. Challenges. It might be a subjective judgment, local condition, an unclear yardstick as the case might be. This is a challenge that needs to be addressed. Now, operational indicators, there are plentiful of challenges. Let's say what you consider more important in a project might not be that considered important by a different stakeholder. Let's say funding for a project, who is funding the project, they want to like to see the milestone achieved, whereas the person who is in the operation of the project might need to look at the efficacy or probably allocation of the resources that needs to take into consideration before milestone has been given a prioritize. So there are subjective judgment based on different stakeholders' vested interest. Local condition, unclear yardstick, as the case might be. Common indicators are counts, very common in every project, in every incident, in every program. You have number of providers trained, number of condom distributed, number of floors built, number of tons of steel produced, number of customers serviced in a bank. So calculation, percentage, rates and ratios. Again, this can be a fraction of the facility, which terms in terms of percentage of facilities for the trained providers, maternity, mortality ratio, TFR or total fertility rate. And I am giving this presentation from the perspective of health issues of a project. Index composite measure quality index comprising of sum of scores in 6 quality outcome indicators. We have the DALI, the disability adjustment life years. Threshold is presence, absence, predetermined levels or standard thereby. Now let us talk the anatomy of an indicator metric. Indicator number one, in fact, if I say, let's say for a health project, let's say ANC care provider trained, is the how many numbers have been care providers has been trained. Providers include any clinical providing direct clinical services, clinician providing direct clinical services to clients seeking an ANC product, probably for public health facilities. Trained refers to the attending of every day of the 5-day training courses offered by the program. Let's say the indicator number two can be the percentage of facilities with a provider trained in an ANC. Now, what are we looking into? The numerators would be numbers of public facilities with the provider who attended all the 5 days of the training. Whereas denominator, it's a division. The percentage we are trying to call is total number of public facilities providing the ANC services. So that is what we need to go around it. Now, composite indicator, how to measure infection prevention of a facility providing an obstetric care. Let's say another thing that comes around it. Now, how do we prevent infection of an obstetric care? Could construct an index. Let's say have a various measurement option. Number one being facility readiness. Is the facility ready, equipped with the obstetric care unit? Is the facility audit, if facility audit has been taken care of, will it stand up to the requirement of the obstetric care unit? Probably. Has regulation sharp containers, up-to-date guidelines on hazardous and medical waste disposal? It's what we are talking about it. The, the HACCP control, hazardous and medical waste disposal, leak-proof leaded container for medical waste, knowledge from providers interviews, practice from provider client observation. Remember, knowledge from provider interviews is something which is very theoretical presence. We need to understand that there should not be any proliferations of the medical waste because it might spread the diseases. It might be an infectious thing. It is not at all hygienic. But when it comes to practice, probably is this whatever has been taught, whatever is there is in the theory, is being practiced in spirit? If not, what are the differences? Or there might be a slip between cups and lips out here. Issues with the composite indicators, how to scale the index, weighted versus unweighted component, value of each component, yes, no, present, absent, probably. Now these are absolute indicators into black and white, yes or no, absent or present, count of sub component, in fact your inventory that we are talking around it, 0 1 total indicators, percentage of maximum possible score, at least 8 out of 10 positive, and how to interpret the report is what we are trying to go around it. Now, if you look into it, this is what we have given as far as the government and the private sectors are concerned. And if you look at the government sector is always leading, and it is leading except for the leak-proof leaded container is concerned. Now, this is where the private sectors are doing wonderful, but rest of all the sectors, either they are neck to neck or the government sector is a wee bit ahead than the private sector. Now, this is an example of composite indicator. It's about your proper disposal of medical waste, wherein the facility is present only with the private sectors with respect to the leak proof rated containers, but rest of all every in every other places the government units are doing wonderfully well. So sources of indicators are predefined indicators from past 7 years of the program, from related to the similar programs as we case around it, from list of global or recommended indicators as the case might be. The Millennium Development Goals, we have the a immunovirus or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome AIDS, as it's been told as. Then we can go about the reproductive health compendium indicators, which is being present out there. Poverty reduction strategy goals by the World Bank. Now these are predefined indicators which is there. We have HDI or Human Development Index. Now, these are there. You need to just map it to yourself and find out where you are standing with respect to the standards available or the benchmarks available there. Remember, indicator pyramid, if you look into it, it starts from the bottom part, and it starts absolutely from the bottom part, And this is what we are looking into it. Right from the district of the facility or in the prevention facility, you identify the progresses, the problems, the challenges. Then probably you step up on a national level, from provincial form into the national level, or the federal form that goes on the federal government level, assesses the effectiveness of responses, reflect goals, objective of national and subnational responses. Now, once you have taken care of the provincial level, the federal levels, then comes the global courses. How are you faring with the advanced countries? How are you faring with the rest of the countries that are doing above average, above, very good and excellent in their field? These are the scenario where your indicators at the on the provincial level would be increasing. As you go to the federal government, the number of indicator will decrease, and eventually in a global indicator you have absolute benchmarks with the number of countries who are actually doing good. So you see from bottom part, it is the number of indicators are quite a few, but on the top front they are absolutely few, in the sense one, two, three indicators which will give you an indication. Let me give you an indicator matrix altogether. Let's say the indicator of the percentage of facilities that been provided by the trained in AMCs. The data sources are program records, definitely yes. Every quarterly, every 3-4 months, you are going to come up with it. So it's every 3 months, every 90 days, you come with the frequency of the percentage of trainers being provided, training being provided, and the decision points might be on a provincial levels, right? The outcomes would be percentage of pregnant women attending at least one of those pregnancy sessions held by a skilled health professional for reasons related to pregnancy. And the data source might be the census, the human management index scores. It can be always be annual or biannual scenario. And the decision point does not provide information as the quality of the care being provided. We come to the indicator reference sheet. Now, what is the indicator reference sheet? It gives me actually the basic information about what has been going around, what is the project all about it, how are we going to plan, how are we planning to collect data, how are we going to study those data that has been collected, probably like to remove the redundant data issues and performance data table, a baseline of the target that comes around it. So yes, we talking about basic information, we're talking about description of the project, we're talking about plans for data collection as far as the indicators are concerned. How do we want to collect those data? Plans for data analysis, reporting, and review. Now, once the data has been collected, it needs to be collated. It has to be, the data has to be mined. It has to be synchronized. It has to make some sense around it, and that is where the data quality issues are coming around it. The data quality issues, we see the extremes of the data needs to be ignored altogether, and probably the data that makes a sense should be presented in a performance data table. Thereby setting indicator targets are individual useful informations about the past trends, what happened way back, let's say last quarter, last year, last to last year, probably a decade back, and the expectation of the customers, of the clients. Now, this is what we are looking at. The donor's expectation is what amount of funding that people are going out, going or doling it to your project. Now, there has to be some sense of resemblance, expert opinion, research finding, and what has been accomplished elsewhere is what we are looking into it. Common pitfalls in indicator selection: indicators not linked to program activities, poorly defined indicators, indicators that do not currently exist and cannot realistically be collected. Process indicators to measure outcomes and impact, indicators that are very sensitive to change. And remember, most common pitfall is having too many indicators. It means it gives you too many of directions and too many of information, and for one to comprehend and make sense of those too many indicators will always take time, delay. In fact, it might confuse the analyzer altogether. So you need to understand which are the pitfalls altogether. Too many indicators to be avoided. Indicators that are sensitive to change needs to be corrected. Process indicators should be matched with the outcomes and so on and so forth. Major selections or pitfalls is indicator not linked to program. Did I say about the steel industry, tons per of day steel production per day? So that makes sense. But tons of customer service per day in a hotel, in a hospital, in a restaurant, they have, despite being in a service industry, they have different issues. It might be average revenue per customers, That might make sense. So indicators should be linked to the program activities. Often it has been seen they are not linked at all. So example is expanded access to AIDS. I've already stated you an example. Activities train provided the current clinical protocols, and that is what we are looking into it. So inappropriate indicators would be percentage of facilities with adequate conditions to provide train. What will I do with the facilities if there are no human beings to train? Better indicators with if clinicians are trained, number of faculties with trained providers, that's what we are looking into. The program, remember, is aiming to affect the facility condition, not provider skills. Let me give you another issues about poorly been defined, indicator being poorly defined. Activities, radio campaign, absolutely mass campaign on the radios to dispel myths about AIDS transmission and prevention. Inappropriate indicators is percentage of population with AIDS knowledge. In fact, we are trying to address people who are not having any knowledge to the AIDS. But see, look how poorly the indicators have been selected. Better indicator would be percentage of population with no correct beliefs about the AIDS. Defined as a percentage correctly rejecting the two most common local misconception about AIDS. Who knows that a healthy looking person can transmit AIDS? AIDS knowledge does not indicate what is desirable. Knowledge that AIDS exists and how is it transmitted. Next thing scenario is data needs to be available for an indicators. If it is not available, how will you go around it? Inappropriate indicators, let's say percentage of days per quarter that service delivery points have been stock out option. You don't have inventory with you. Data issues should be information on stock out may not be collected on a daily basis. Why? That's the data issue. Better indication would be percentage of delivery points that has stock out of drugs at some time during the last quarter. If relying on the routine data, indicators definition must depend how the data were collected. Absolutely yes. If you are doing it on a quarterly basis, it will kind of completely give you there were 10 days in a quarter or 6 days in a quarter which was not managing with enough inventories. Probably these are the things that needs to be addressed around. So that needs to be addressed altogether. So indicator system, how much is enough? The rule of the thumb, let me give it to you. At least one or two indicators more than enough. Personally speaking, not more than three indicators are required. Two indicators is sufficient to give you enough confidence in a project. So at least one or two indicators per key activity or result, ideally from different data sources. At least one indicator for every core activities. No more than 8 to 10 indicators per area of significant program, and always use a mix of data collection strategies and sources. Remember, Albert Einstein stated, not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. That is very important. Should not get messed up with indicators and forget the overall objective goals of the project thereby. With this, I come to an end of this presentation. Thank you for watching this video till the very end. Thank you very much.